Hey everybody, Nicole here from Hair of the Dog. We have a great conversation this week with my friend Lisa Peterson, and we are talking about how to best serve the LGBTQ plus community in our pet photography business. If you are like me and many other pet photographers, you love serving this market. We want to be inclusive. We want to include them. We want to let them know that we are a safe business to work with. And Lisa's helping us navigate what that really looks like and what things we should and shouldn't do, and really how to best approach this type of service, and to make sure that we are doing the best we can for this particular community. So if you are in business as a pet photographer, I highly recommend you listen to this podcast. And actually, quite frankly, if you're a human, I recommend that you listen to this podcast. So without further ado, enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hair of the Dog podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Begley, and today I am joined by a very special guest, longtime Academy member, and just fabulous person all around, Lisa Peterson from Pawsh Pet Photography over in the great state of Minnesota. Hello, Lisa. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Great to be here. Hi, everybody.
So glad to have you here. So you approached me about doing this podcast episode, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. This is going to be really good. This is required listening, I think, for anybody out there that is a working pet photographer. Actually, quite frankly, this is probably required listening for any human out there that wants to make sure they are serving everyone in their market in a way that is inclusive and welcoming, and just, giving the best possible service out there. So we're going to talk about a lot of things. Specifically, one of the things we're going to talk about is the best ways to make sure that we are serving the LGBTQ plus community, because I don't know about you guys out there, but I I love this community. I mean, everyone that I've ever met in this community is so kind and wonderful, and I always want to make sure I serve them to the best of my ability. And there's just certain things out there that it's just like, oh wait, now how should I pose? Oh wait, is there and you don't wanna step on any toes, and you don't wanna say the wrong thing, but, we're coming from a place of wanting to be very, very, you know, giving the best service and loving these clients as well. So, we're gonna talk about all those things today, and, Lisa is lovingly offered to walk us through the process and give us some really great tips and tricks to make sure that, our next session goes really, really well. So, thank you, Lisa, for being here with us. Do you want to tell everybody just a little bit first about your business, your background, and kind of how you got started in this whole pet photography thing?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a part-time pet photographer, and I got started. Most people probably photographing humans.
Yep.
Did that for a number of years, and then it was actually one of your presentations that I listened to. Just happened to hear it many years ago, and said, "Wait a minute, pet photography is a thing." Ah, Nirvana.
I'm in.
And then I had to pause for a minute because I got married. But when I came back, I switched everything over to pet photography. And, like most pet photographers, probably if dogs weren't attached to humans at the other end, I wouldn't deal with humans at all. Um, so I do that part time. And my full time job is in corporate America. And I do a lot of account management type role, and a lot of process improvement. That's kind of my background. I have a lot of certifications in that. And I volunteer on our Pride ERG community, and I am the communications chair for this year. So all of this stuff is my passion, right? It all kind of comes together, all the process flows, all of the contracting, all the talking to people, all of the diversity, working with pets. It's all sort of a mishmash in my brain, and I love it all.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. So let's, I guess, just dive into talking about just some different things. I know we're going to be talking a little bit about unconscious bias, which I think back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I definitely learned about this in Psychology 101, like way back in college. But refresh our memory of what exactly that is.
Yeah, it's actually, I'm fascinated by this. I'm fascinated by the human brain. So I have some stats for you. So consciously, when we process information in our brains, right? Our brain has developed to like take in information, all the inputs. We can process about 40 pieces of information in 1 second in our brain. Like conscious, we're aware of
Uh-huh.
that. But unconsciously, we can process up to 11 million pieces of information. So you think of
Yes.
that from the time that you're a child, learning the world all the way up to now in your current life, how many pieces of information unconsciously are in your brain.
Mhm.
So that coupled with social conditioning, right? Because we all have that, and we're not always aware of it, but our tribe is who we are,
Yep.
and that makes us who we are. And when we look out into the world, we have that stored back here somewhere, and because it's unconscious, we're not aware of it, and it creates this view of the world that can really be your blind spot, and it results in all kinds of negative consequences for individuals and also for groups of people. And so that bias plays out in the workplace, it plays out in your family relationships, it plays out everywhere. And so that bias piece is something that I think as pet photographers, especially, and working with people, you really need to be aware of it so that you can serve all of your market in an
Mhm.
appropriate and empathetic way.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually heard a study once, it was fascinating, about how much your brain can take in, that unconscious brain. It was a study of like two people. Might mess up the details, but I can paraphrase here. It was a whole bunch of people in about a crowded restaurant, and they had two people kind of in the middle, and they had questions afterwards of like, hey, asking questions about what did they remember from their conversation and from maybe the conversations of the people around. And, it would be what you would expect. And then they were able to put those people, the same person under like a fairly deep hypnosis, like meditative state to access more of that subconscious mind. And they were able to recall basically everything everyone was talking about, like in the entire restaurant, because your subconscious mind is taking all of that in, but our conscious mind just like filters all the stuff out because it's like, can't. I can only handle 40 things. Can't do
Right.
11 million. Calm down.
And the other thing that happens is when you're doing that, you put them into categories, right? Like
Hmm.
as a kid, you learn like that's a cat, that's a tree, right? And then you kind of expand from there. And so you are always filtering and categorizing, even if you're not aware of it. Like,
Yes.
females do this, males do this, married people do this, African American people do this. It's just you don't know it, but that's that filtering and that categorization just happens over a lifetime. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and that's just how we're set up. I mean, our brain is just like to process that information. It's just like this is what I do, and our brain loves patterns. And when there's something that's out of the ordinary, the pattern, we're like, oh, wait, and then that conscious brain is like that could be danger because it's not normal. So then you might start to have this like, oh, I don't know, how do I approach that? How do I do this? Because it's just something new. Yeah, absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
All
So
right. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was I was reading about this and I tried to come up with like some examples, right? So one of them was from Google, which
Uh-huh.
has been fascinating. So their developers came up with an upload thing on your phone for YouTube.
Uh-huh.
And so they developed it and then they were monitoring the stats and they said, wait a minute, up to 10% of these videos are loaded upside down. What's going on? Like it can't be 10% of the population doing it incorrectly.
Yeah.
What? So they researched it and what they figured out was they did not take into account left-handed people because the phone turns 180 degrees.
Oh.
And so they were loading it incorrectly, right? But it didn't occur to them because they were all right-handed people.
Uh-huh.
And it also didn't occur to them that it would be it's not incorrect. It's
Right.
just that's left-handed. Me, I'm left-handed, right? Like
Right.
that's just how I would hold the phone, and it wasn't intentional either. So that's kind of a good parable, if you will,
Uh-huh.
where how
Right.
it works, right? Like nobody had ill intent. Nobody thought it was a bad thing. It just didn't occur to you.
Right.
And
Right.
that's what happens. It happened in my own life. Like it just happens. It's not
Yeah.
because you're a bad person. It's not because you have ill intent or hate people or are prejudiced. None of that. That's
Right.
not what it is.
Yeah. No, that's really important to say there because, yeah, none of this conversation is, calling anybody out for anything. It's just an educational piece so that we have more information and can see more of how that left-handed upload works for that
Exactly
Google.
that.
That's really interesting. That I would be like, wait, why? That's weird. Yeah, that
Right?
wouldn't have occurred to me I am right-handed.
Yep, and it's
There's
those
my
blind spots.
right-handed bias.
Yep, exactly.
Yep,
Exactly right.
yep, for sure. Awesome. Well, yeah, would you be willing to share a little bit about, maybe your experiencing some of these biases in the world?
Yeah, it's fascinating. So I was reflecting on this, right? So for almost a decade, I was married to a male and lived what we call a heteronormative life, right? I was married, lived in the house, had a kid, all the things. And we just went about our world, like I was employed. We went out to eat. The server would hand the check to my husband. We went to see the attorney, financial planner. People came to our house and fixed the plumbing, all the things. And I didn't worry about it. I just called it up and it was fine. Like it
Yep.
just happened. And then I got divorced and I was a single mom for 15-ish years. And then I met my wife, who is now the love of my life. And all the things that I took for granted, I no longer take for granted. So
Mhm.
I love nothing more than, being with my wife and holding her hand. But when we're out in public, it's a very real concern. Is this a safe place in which we can hold
Mm,
hands?
mhm.
Um, when we go to an attorney? Are they attorneys who will not only not be biased, but also know the things so that we have the right family documents to
Mhm.
help keep our assets as they should be?
Mhm.
When we go out to eat, my wife doesn't care. It drives me crazy. The server will say, "Is this one check or two?" Even though we have wedding rings on. Um, all of those little things
Mhm.
that I wasn't aware of, and I was really blissfully unaware because I didn't need to be aware.
Right,
I
right.
am now aware of. And it's not anybody's fault, it just is. And it's a completely different way to live in the world. And though it's challenging, I think I appreciate the privileges that I do have a little bit more because I'm aware that they may be taken away.
Mhm. Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, especially from the experience of experiencing both sides. Some people maybe grow up and spend their whole life in, one relationship or the other. But to be able to see both sides can be, that contrast can it's probably pretty darn eye opening.
Yeah, it is. One of the biggest things that I thought I was always, open to other people, but I kind of thought that once people came out, it was a done thing.
Right.
And I was dismayed to find out it's not a done thing. It's a lifelong thing. Every time you go to the doctor, every time you
Mm-hmm.
call somebody, when you go to a photographer, when we had our engagement photos taken, and somebody for our wedding, right? All of those things. Are we going to pick a spot that's safe for us to be together? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing how it's always either in the front of your brain or the back of
Mm-hmm.
your brain, but it's always there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, so yeah, so what are some ways, 'cause you talked about, picking out a photographer and I've actually thought about this too in the past, like, do I put on my website that like I am friendly, I am serving this community, or is it enough to just like have a couple images on there that showcase, those types of relationships? Like what's the best way to support these different communities?
Right. So as a photographer, I would say the clearer you can make it, the better.
Yeah.
And I would say make it clear, but also make it consistent. In other words, please don't put one photograph of a same-sex couple and do one post in June and call yourself an ally.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we are very attuned to that. And so what I have some like specific. So on your website, make sure that you have more than one photo of same-sex people or people of different
Mhm,
gender identifying populations, if you're open to that. Also make a blog post about it. But when you do, try your best to not have it be the thing that's marketing to that community. Make
mhm.
it more normalized, I guess. Like, I met Sam and Joe and it was a beautiful ceremony, not mentioning that it's, don't put
Right,
hashtag equality, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
um, approach it from a more normal thing that you do, but do it often, do it consistently, and do it honestly. You can blog about it. You can donate to LGBTQ plus silent auctions and causes. You can volunteer there.
Mm,
Most
mhm.
communities have a pride. event, you could consider having a booth there with a giveaway. You could consider offering, it's very rare that people in my community get something special just because we're of that community. So if
Mhm.
you offered a giveaway, that'd be something you could do. And when you're posting on social media, also be aware that some holidays are difficult and not all people celebrate those holidays. And so perhaps make your post a little more inclusive to say, for those who are celebrating Mother's Day, happy Mother's Day.
Mhm.
And for those who aren't, I wish you peace, or something to acknowledge that not everybody celebrates the same as you are,
Mhm.
and make it more open. And then when you're marketing to people in my community, I would say, make sure that you're doing it from a place of service and openness, and be consistent just like you would with any other marketing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Um, those are all really, really, really good suggestions. Is that say you're a photographer
Mm.
and, you haven't, because this tends to happen for any photography business, right? You're like, "Oh, I just had a dachshund, and now I photograph a whole bunch of dachshund people because, like, people that have the same breed dog tend to run in the same circles." And now you're like, "Oh, I'm a border collie person. Oh, I'm a German shepherd person." And just like you get this influx of certain breeds of dogs, and likely can be the same with target clients, because again, their friends generally are like them. So then the word spreads and you get referrals from that same community. If you're a photographer that hasn't yet served someone in the community, is it okay to go out there and like look for specific models of, I'm looking for um uh a gay couple of women, a gay couple of men, and then how, when you are doing that model call, what's the proper terminology? Like, are we, because I know that changes all the time, right? Where it's like, oh, say this, but you don't say that. Like, is gay acceptable? Is it homosexual? Like, what's the best way that we can reach out to bring some potential models in so we can start showing that we're serving this market?
Yeah, so I would say when you're doing the model call, make it as inclusive as you can. And you can always start with, I'm looking to expand my diversity, would love to work with LGBTQ plus people, and then give some specifics about, is it outdoor, is it indoor,
Hmm.
if there's ages that you're looking for, and then leave it broad.
Hmm.
I wouldn't specifically say, I'm looking for two men or two women.
Yeah.
'Cause that gets into a whole bunch of like, how do they identify? And like,
Right.
I would leave it general like that and let your audience come to you. The other thing, and I think they're national, but here in Minnesota, we have a chamber of commerce that's specifically for LGBTQ plus people called Quorum.
Oh.
And in the larger cities, that would be a place to start to go to them and say, I'm a photographer, I'm looking to expand. Do you know of anybody, or could you post, or whatever? And I'm sure they would be more than willing to help you out.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't realize that was available or a thing to, a great that's a great what's the word I'm looking for? Network, really, a chamber of
Yeah,
commerce. Yeah,
yeah,
specifically for so it says specifically for businesses that are friendly towards
yes,
the
yep.
okay. Yeah, I
And
love
be
that.
allies. So you could consider joining yourself. It's like, for
Mhm.
me, it's not that expensive, and like here they're active, and they're a great organization, and they have like a silent auction and other things that I choose to go to as well.
Yeah.
So it would be a great introduction. They also have networking groups for business to business. That's another way you could market,
Mhm.
which has worked well for me. And some of them are allies, some of them are queer business owners. Either way, I might consider both, and see what comes up.
Yeah, I love that. As you're saying ally, like what kind of defines that? Someone that is supportive of the community, I'm assuming, but is there like more to that to
Yeah.
like things that we should look out for, like I said, like I love this community, and sometimes it can be just because things change so quickly and you're like, "Oh, I don't wanna, like, accidentally insult anyone," so it can be really nerve-wracking sometimes, like, making sure that we're coming at it from the right, most inclusive way. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
would love to know more about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, learning more And the thing I, as a person of this community, what I'm always challenged with is, so allies are wonderful, and I think it's fantastic, and I welcome all of them, and will answer any question. The same is probably not true for some people in my community,
Mhm.
because we have trauma histories and a lot of other
Mhm.
challenges. I would say if you want to be an ally to this community, fantastic. Spend some time educating yourself and
Yeah.
don't put the burden on us to do that for you.
Mhm.
By the same time, if you have questions or there's things that you're wondering about, developing a relationship with somebody where you feel comfortable saying, look, I don't know how to phrase this. I'm not sure. Can you help me? And I am
Mhm.
confident they would help you do that, so long as you're coming at it from a place of service and respect and like, help me understand.
Yep.
And also taking some of the ownership yourself.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I love that. I had another question. It'll come back. Let's kind of move forward to when we have a couple coming to us for a shoot,
Yeah.
and maybe that planning piece of it, because I imagine just like heterosexual couple, there might be different maybe some people are kind of in, and like, couples are really lovey-dovey, and others you're just like, "No, it's really about the dog." And it's not really about them and their relationship. Is there anything different that you ask during like the pre-planning session in preparation for capturing these images of them together?
Yeah, that's a that's
Yeah.
a great question. So a couple of things. So I would in general review all of your materials, like your contracts, your intake
Mhm.
form, make them inclusive and gender inclusive. And then when you're in the planning session with the clients, I would ask them, right? And ask them, if it's going to be an outdoor session, ask them if there are any places that are special to them that they like to go to,
Mhm.
because that will automatically be a place where they feel comfortable.
Mhm.
And then you'll have to decide, photographically, if that's going to work. But the point of the discussion is to figure out where they feel comfortable. Going back to what I said earlier, when we did our engagement photos, we picked a place that was quiet because we didn't want to be the spectacle
Mhm.
when we were lovey-dovey, right?
Right.
So bear that in mind. And if the biggest tip I can give for posing is to, going back to that unconscious bias, kind of eradicate from your mind your own heteronormative relationship, because somebody has the masculine energy, somebody has the feminine energy, because that's how you identify.
Mhm.
Um, Please do not put that on other couples. Kind of eradicate that from your mind, because that's not how it works for us. Speaking for the whole community, which I can't do, but in general,
Yeah.
that's not how it works. And so, we as photographers, I know I was educated. Okay, if it's a woman, accentuate, feminine posing,
Yeah, right.
male, masculine posing, and you kind of have to retrain your brain and do it what I call comfort posing. I'm sure
Mhm.
people have different ideas about it, but in general, leave it more open ended. For a control freak, that's a little scary. But in general, what I would say
Control
is
enthusiast, Lisa.
control enthusiast. I love it. Right? And the couple will naturally fall into something. For example, if you said, I would love for you to go stand over that tree. And while you're there, embrace one another or face each other. Or one of you stand facing me and one of you stand facing the tree and lock elbows or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Um, but don't get into, how you would pose male or female. And then once they're in the pose, they will naturally just do what's comfortable. One person will do that, they're used to it, right?
Yep.
Presumably. So
Yep.
that's what they'll do. And then tweak the pose if you need to, but also do it from a place of what looks good in the camera, not
Mm.
gender based. Like if there's light on the face, you're going to have to move them, right?
Right.
But don't do it so that, it looks more feminine. Don't do that, because they've already shown you how they're comfortable, right?
Okay.
So
Yep.
let them be, adjust for your job, but not for gender.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. I know I tend to, and it doesn't matter who I'm photographing. The great thing about dogs is so much of it is a relationship type shoot. So I'll kind of put them in the general area of like, all right, let's have you guys stand over here or sit over here, and kind of tell them like, okay, we're going to do kind of a formal, like, look at me first. And then, all right, now we're going to give some love to the dog. And I just kind of give them that general, and
Yeah.
then I can start to tweak a little bit for lighting, for just posing of, if somebody has an unflattering pose to kind of adjust a little bit to make it a little bit more flattering. But then, yeah, that's the same kind of thing for really any couple, because even a heterosexual couple, they might not be, like, for instance, my husband and I are not like PDA type people. And so, like, if we went to a photo shoot and they're like, oh, we'll do this and that, blah, 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 I'd be like, that's just not how we roll.
Right.
you know? So, yeah, no, that's really, really great advice for sure.
And some of it can be. So in the pre-planning, a lot of that can be, I think, like any other person you're photographing, if you can say, this is how I pose people, it will allay the fears of, oh my goodness, are we going to try to, do something that we're not, like you were saying,
Mhm,
right? And just
mhm,
say, I'm a very natural, I like dogs, right? We will make it about the dog. We'll have some family photos and it will be in a very natural way. I won't force you to do anything you're not comfortable with. Um, and then when you're there, kind of heighten your own meter. You can
mhm,
tell when people are stiff and not feeling comfortable, even if they're trying to cooperate with you.
mhm,
Um, and just say, you know what, that was great. Let's try something else. Don't put it on them. Don't make a big deal out of it, just like you would for anybody
mhm.
else. Move on, try something else. Even if they say, yeah, I'm comfortable, and you can see they're not.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because generally we're gonna be like, "Oh, yeah, no, it's fine." I mean, how many times do people just say, "Well, it's fine," because they are there to get the photos taken, they think this is how it has to be, so, yeah, being in tune to seeing how their comfort level is, and giving them other options is really, really good.
Yeah.
Um, oh my gosh, this has been really, really good. What is there anything else that you think would be important to cover for our community?
Let's see. Oh, so a couple other things. So when you're communicating with, and this goes for anybody, I would say, but
Mhm,
specifically for my community, when you're communicating with them, whether at the pre-planning session or in the session itself, try not to make assumptions
mm,
about anything, their
mhm,
family, anything, what they're celebrating, any of that. Ask open-ended questions,
mhm.
but don't assume.
Yes. Yeah, that would be really, really good. I know I ask, for all of my planning sessions of who's gonna be like, let me know everyone that's gonna be involved in the session and your relationship to them. So
Yeah,
that is because I wanna know names, because I am not good at on the fly remembering names, like, terrible. But if I have all the names written down before I get there, I can, like, go over them a bit and then commit them to memory and actually remember names. So that's, like, one of the main reasons I started asking that. But it also then, they'll let you know of, like, Wendy, Heather, spouse, like, okay, great. So then exactly who's coming and what their relationship to each other is.
yeah,
Yeah, and sometimes I would ask too, especially did this when I was doing family photography stuff. I would just ask, are there any special, family dynamic things that I should be aware of?
yeah,
Especially if maybe they were adopting a child, or there was, an ex at play. Who knows? Like, most people didn't fill anything in there, but the ones that did, it was really helpful information to know.
yeah.
Um, so that could be a
The
good
other
way just
thing
to find out.
I would
Yeah.
add to that is when you're doing that, also ask their preferred pronouns.
Mhm.
And
That's
you
a
can
good
share yours
concept.
as well.
Yeah. Mhm.
And also maybe add it to your email signature and like your Instagram profile.
Mhm.
Um, that's another signal that you're
Mhm.
aware of, serving this community.
Yeah.
And one thing that I look for.
Yeah. No, that's a really great point. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. This has been really, really, really helpful, because I know that so much the community feels the way I do, that we want to serve this community the best that we can. And we love working with them, and we want to, make sure that we are being as inclusive and possible as possible. Um, which I would imagine a lot of these uh, tips also go along with serving really any any
Yeah,
non-mainline community.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so good,
absolutely.
so
Yep.
good. All right. Well, Lisa, this has been so, so good. Is there anything else that we need to cover? I think we covered most of the things.
Yeah.
Um, if you guys have questions, Lisa's really active in the Hair of the Dog Academy, and also in our Hair of the Dog free community. You can join the free community at hairofthedogacademy.com/community. It's basically our old Facebook group off of Facebook. And yeah, if you have any questions in there, Lisa, where are you online so they can follow along with your business? And, if you guys found this helpful, definitely please reach out to Lisa and let her know how
Yeah.
helpful this was.
So I'm on Instagram at Facebook at Pawsh Photo, PAWSHPHOTO. And my email is lisa@pawshphoto.com.
Awesome. This has been, again, fantastic. Thank you, Lisa, so much. And all of you guys out there, hope you found this helpful and we can get out there and serve this community even more than we have been in the past. So thanks, everyone, and we'll see you again next week.